The movie opens with the shadow of a disc-shaped object which can be seen flying across a sweeping landscape. There is a cloaked figure at a waterfall. It is a humanoid alien. It removes its cloak and consumes a dark liquid. The body convulses in pain and appears to mutate from the inside. It falls into the water and the body begins to dissolve. We are now introduced to an archaeological team in Scotland that discovers a cave that is 35,000 years old. Two of them, Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway, examine some cave drawings which Elizabeth believes are an indication that someone wants them to come and find them. Sometime later, in deep space, on board the USS Prometheus, David, an android, inspects the bodies of the crew who are in cryogenic sleep. He is able to view the dreams of the crew and spends time exercising and studying. As the ship approaches its destination, the mission director, Vickers, automatically comes out of cryo sleep and instructs David to wake the crew. Elizabeth and Holloway are amongst the crew who are relaxing. Later, during the crew's briefing, they are shown a holographic video from the owner of the Wayland Corporation. Peter Wayland is an old man who says that by now he is dead. He introduces David as the closest thing he has to a son and confirms that Elizabeth and Holloway are in charge. They continue the presentation. They present images of old civilizations that all show ancient man appearing to worship giant beings that are pointing at the stars. The only star system in that configuration is so far from Earth that they can have no way of knowing about it. There is one planet that is capable of supporting life, and that is where they are going. They call these giant beings engineers, as they believe that they engineered humanity. Elizabeth and Holloway meet Vickers in her room. It is a separate module, described as a lifeboat. She also has a very rare and expensive medical pod in her room. She is skeptical about this mission and believes that the images are just scribbles from primitive man. She instructs them not to touch anything on the surface below them and to report back to her, as her company is funding this mission. Sometime later, the ship flies across the surface of the planet and Holloway spots some unnatural structures. The captain, Yannick, lands the ship nearby and a survey team leaves the ship in protective suits. Elizabeth, Holloway and David are on this team with other crew members Milburn, Fifield and Ford. They drive to a pyramid-like structure. Yannick and Vickers are able to view their progress through cameras on the crew's helmets. As they enter, Fifield sends probes out to map the interior, producing a map back at the flight deck of the ship. When they discover that the atmosphere inside the pyramid is fine, Holloway removes his helmet. Everyone follows suit. David inspects some carvings on the wall. They are covered in mucus. The symbols light up as he runs his finger across them. This seems to have activated a holographic recreation of large alien figures which run towards the team. As they watch, one of the figures falls, and as the team inspect that area, they find the remains of the alien. It was killed by a closing door. David reads the alien language on that door. Fifield wants to leave and he and Milburn leave together. Elizabeth thinks that the body is over 2,000 years old. David manages to open the door to reveal a giant humanoid head and many murals. Elizabeth and Ford examine the dead alien's head. Elizabeth instructs everyone to touch nothing, while David examines some cylinders which contain a black liquid. Elizabeth realizes that they have affected the atmosphere in there and they should get out. She and Ford try to collect the dead alien's head for later examination. On board the ship, Yannick is informed that a storm is coming and orders them to return immediately. David secretly takes one of the cylinders. As he leaves, there is black liquid leaking over the floor. As the transport races back to the ship, Elizabeth drops the alien head. She runs back out to collect it and the storm surrounds her. Holloway goes to help her, but they are both rescued by David. Yannick discovers that Fifield and Milburn are not on the ship. They got lost in the pyramid. He radios them and tells them that he'll rescue them in the morning. Sometime later, Elizabeth and Ford are examining the alien head. They realize that it is wearing a helmet and David helps to remove it. The head underneath is humanoid, but they think it was in some state of change. They stimulate the brain to make it think that it's still alive. The eyes open and it continues to mutate. They contain the head and then it explodes. Later, David is standing next to a cryopod, wearing a helmet and talking to somebody. He activates the cryopod. He then meets Vickers in the corridor and tells her that they said, "Try harder." As Elizabeth and Ford continue to examine samples from the head, they realize that it has identical DNA to humans. David opens the cylinder that he brought back. It contains alien material. He dabs a spot of the black liquid onto his fingertip. Shortly afterwards he has a conversation with Holloway and asks him what he would do to get the answers to why he came all this way. Holloway replies, "Anything and everything." David pours a drink for Holloway but dips his finger in the drink, infecting it with the black liquid. Meanwhile, Fifield and Milburn are in the pyramid and discover a pile of alien bodies. Yannick detects a life form near to them, but then it soon vanishes from the map. He passes it off as just a glitch, but Fifield and Milburn nervously walk away from that area. In their quarters, Elizabeth shares the DNA results with Holloway. They have a conversation about the creation of life and Elizabeth reveals that she cannot have children. They starting have a fun and passion. At the flight deck, Vickers is examining the map. She and Yannick have a brief flirtation and he agrees to meet her in her quarters in 10 minutes. Shortly afterwards Fifield and Milburn see a snake-like creature slithering towards them. Milburn reaches out to touch it and it wraps itself around his arm. He screams for Fifield to cut it off. Its blood sprays over Fifield's helmet, melting the glass and his skin beneath. The creature climbs into Milburn's suit and slides down his throat. Sometime later Holloway awakens and as he washes his face he notices that there is something in his eyes. Suddenly Yannick calls through to Holloway and Elizabeth. He cannot contact Fifield and Milburn. A team returns to the pyramid while David leaves in a buggy to repair one of the faulty probes. Vickers tells David to direct his video feed to her only. As he explores, he discovers more cylinders and aliens, but as when he discovers some kind of control room he disables the feed so that Vickers can no longer watch. David is at a control panel and watches some more holographic images of the humanoid aliens. He sees a map of the galaxy and identifies the Earth as their destination. He also discovers another body in a pod which still seems to be alive. Inside the pyramid, Holloway is clearly sick. They find the containers which are leaking black liquid and also Milburn's body. Ford realizes that there is something in Milburn's throat and the snake-like creature leaps out and slithers away. As the team returns to the ship, Holloway is screaming. Vickers will not let him back on the ship as he is clearly infected. He tells the rest of the team to leave without him and Vickers kills him with a flamethrower. Sometime later Elizabeth is being examined by David. He reveals that she is pregnant with a non-conventional fetus. He won't let her see it and she starts to convulse. David sedates her. Ford arrives wearing a biohazard suit to put her back into cryo sleep. However, Elizabeth is still conscious and fights to escape them. She runs to the medical pod in Vickers' room and has the creature surgically removed from her womb. The creature is restrained inside the medical pod as Elizabeth escapes. She sets the machine to decontaminate the contents. Suddenly Fifield's camera activates. He seems to be outside the ship. The door is opened and Fifield enters and starts to kill members of the crew. Yannick kills him with the flamethrower. Meanwhile Elizabeth stumbles into a room containing David, a team of medics and Peter Wayland. She realizes that he had been on the ship this whole time in cryo sleep. He also wants to meet the engineers. Although Elizabeth says that they are all dead, David reveals that there is still one alive. Yannick discovers Elizabeth preparing to go with Wayland's team. He tries to convince her to leave but to no avail. He does promise her that he will do whatever he has to make sure no alien material finds its way home. Vickers meets with Wayland. He is her father. As the team returns to the pyramid, Elizabeth is reluctant to remove her helmet, although David confirms that Holloway's source of infection was not airborne. He also confirms that the cylinders are in the cargo hold. Yannick examines the map and realizes that it is a ship within the pyramid. David leads the team to the flight deck and confirms that the aliens were about to leave for Earth when things went wrong. He believes that he can communicate with the aliens. They examine the body. It awakens and stands up. Elizabeth demands to know why they were going to Earth and why they hate them. Instead, Wayland tells David to explain that, "We have come, just like you asked." The alien picks up David and rips his head off. Elizabeth escapes as the alien attacks the rest of the team. Vickers watches Wayland die through David's camera. The alien activates the ship as David watches. Elizabeth is still running towards Prometheus as the alien ship emerges. Elizabeth tells Yannick that he must stop it as it is heading for Earth, carrying death. Vickers elects to leave the ship on an escape pod, but the remainder of the crew stay to help Yannick. Yannick ejects Vickers' lifeboat module and crashes the Prometheus into the alien spacecraft. Vickers and Elizabeth are running across the surface of the planet as pieces of spacecraft debris rain down upon them. Vickers is hit and dies, and Elizabeth is buried. As she climbs out, she only has 2 minutes of oxygen remaining and makes her way to the lifeboat module. Inside, she hears a noise and explores. The creature that was removed from her womb is still alive. David contacts her and informs her that the humanoid alien is also coming for her. She releases the creature, which attacks the humanoid alien while she escapes. The creature puts a tentacle into the mouth of the alien, appearing to kill it. Back outside, Elizabeth is crying when David asks her for help. He knows that there are other ships around that he can operate. She drives a buggy to collect him. Although David says he can take her home, she wants to go where the aliens come from. She wants to know why they created humanity and now why they want to kill them. She leaves a message to anyone who may follow them to not come here. There's only death here, and she's leaving it behind. They leave in another alien spaceship. Back on board the lifeboat module, the humanoid alien starts to convulse and a new creature bursts out of its chest and roars.